Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks for joining us. Well, for Tom Benson, last week should have been spent with happy memories of the 5th anniversary of the Saints Super Bowl win. Instead, he's having to play defense against his relatives. We'll look tonight at the continuing inheritance saga and the key members of the Benson family. Politico magazine looked at Governor Bobby Jindal this week and saw local drawbacks to national ambitions. We'll see why. We'll also take our annual look at political satire in carnival parades, plus the Pelicans at midseason, and our Future Watch segment examines plans for Gallier Hall. On the march for us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeff Duncan, sports columnist, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Tyler Bridges, freelance journalist. First, we're going to go over to Jeff and continue to talk about the Benson family feud. There was some action in court this week about that. What went on there?
Well, this battle is being fought on two fronts, and I think it's confused a lot of probably New Orleanians and people that have been following it. There's a case going on in San Antonio, Texas, which is basically a hearing about his estate in Texas. Basically all the assets of his estate that he built his empire on before he bought the Saints, his car dealerships, his ranch that he has over there, and his banks. Those assets, the heirs, Rita Benson LeBlanc, the granddaughter who's well known here in New Orleans, Renee Benson, his lone surviving child, his daughter, and Ryan Benson have filed a suit, basically a temporary restraining order to seize those assets right now, which he tried to basically transfer over and gain control of because there is a trust. He did
transfer some cash out of that.
He did, yes. And so they filed for a temporary restraining order. That the judge over there, Judge Reckoff, basically ruled that two receivers now will be in control of that trust temporarily going forward. Then the case that's being, the hearing that we had here this past week was basically an interdiction, is basically a mental competency trial to determine whether he is capable of making decisions on his assets and his own well-being. And that's the other case. And right now, that's the judge this week ruled that he's going to have to undergo a medical evaluation, psychiatric evaluation by 3 different doctors, one from Tom Benson's legal team. They will pick it. The other side will pick another doctor, and then the 2 doctors that they pick will pick a 3rd medical examiner, and that will be done over the next few weeks. I think they have to pick, the timeline is they have to pick the experts by February 25th, and then the evaluations have to be done by March 13th.
Now, the heirs had wanted the judge to name a specific doctor. Do we know if this doctor will indeed be one of those? The judge didn't name that doctor.
No, we don't know yet, but I assume that the one that they want will be picked. There was some contention about the one that the doctor that Tom Benson's side was presenting was just a cardiologist, was not really a psychiatrist. I know that the Randy Smith, the lead attorney for the 3 R's, if you will, the 3 heirs, they handpicked this doctor who they say is a specialist in this kind of geriatric psychology. So we'll see which ones they actually end up getting the call. And
Mr. Benson has said, "Okay, I'll do this."
Yes,
he doesn't really have a choice, does he?
Yeah, they didn't have a choice. They did not want to do it. Make no mistake, this was a small defeat, but a defeat for Benson's legal team. They wanted the judge to just throw this case out for lacking merit.
Do you think this is a case where the judge is just making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed because they're talking about so much money?
I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I also think that there's some concern. I think they do have some concerns. Certainly, the judge in San Antonio had some concerns. If you read, the suit, he actually said that he was really concerned that Tom Benson did not show up in court, did not testify, that he was not the one that wrote the letter, the so-called letter to the heirs, basically cutting them off The attorney had to do it for him.
Well, couldn't Tom Benson just settle this whole question by having a press conference and just ask any question you want, and he would,
or showing up in court?
That would settle the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and I've asked the Saints executives that exact question. And I think they realize at some point they're going to have to do that. But right now that we're in this is being tried in a court, they're really hesitant to do that.
They're following the court procedure. Let's have you talk a little bit now about the relatives. We, of course, over the years have gotten familiar with Rita LeBlanc. But Renee Benson is somebody that's kind of new to the community of New Orleans. Can you just talk about her and what really she's been up to over these years?
Well, yeah, that's a really good point, because she was going to be, according to the succession plan that Tom Benson had in place, was actually going to be the primary controlling owner of the teams. She was going to get almost 60% of the estate and control of the New Orleans Saints. She is the one surviving child that Tom Benson has from his first marriage, from his first wife was Shirley Benson. They could not have children as a couple, so they adopted 3 children. Unfortunately, they've had a lot of tragedy in Tom Benson's life, and his other 2 children died before they reached 40 years old. So Renee has been very close to him over the years, and she had, of course, two children, Ryan and Renee,
and Rita.
And Rita. And Rita has been the one family member, direct family member, that's been heavily involved with the Saints and Pelicans all along. Renee has been in San Antonio, where she's from, and basically has run his assets over there, his banks, the car dealerships over there. And Ryan, her son, the grandson of Tom Benson, has run the family ranch for a long time. And they've all been, in the last couple of years, as we knew that the succession plan was about to take place, have been getting more involved with the New Orleans Saints. Rita has always had an office out on Airline Drive at the Saints facility, but Renee and Ryan have had offices built in the last 6 months. They were going to start being out there more often. They were coming in for board of directors meetings. So they were going to be much more heavily involved, because Tom Benson's getting ready to turn 88. And the reality is that he's not going to be running this team for much longer.
Well, Renee and Ryan they reside primarily in Texas, is that correct?
Correct. Blanco, Texas, just outside of San Antonio, where, of course, Tom Benson's ranch is over there in Johnson City, Texas. So he still has a lot of business over there. And Renee, you could make an argument that Renee, considering that she's run these big, high-profile businesses, is much more qualified to maybe take control of the New Orleans Saints than Gail Benson, his wife, who really has never run any business of that size. I'm not sure anybody's ready to be an owner of an NFL football team. There's no really way to prepare for that. Mm-hmm. But at least she's had some business experience running large companies and large enterprises.
Jeff, how's this all playing with the front offices for the Saints and the Pelicans? Are they nervous about this, or?
Well, I think there's certainly, the lines have been drawn now. Most of the executives within the Saints and Pelicans front office have kind of allied with Gail Benson and, of course, Tom Benson. I mean, this is what Tom Benson presumably wants. This is what he purportedly has communicated to his heirs in letters. They're arguing, of course, the other side that he's been unduly influenced to make these decisions.
And Rita LeBlanc has been removed from NFL committees, is that correct?
Right, and that was kind of I think mainly just a rubber stamp type thing. I mean, she'd been cut out of the team and been fired, essentially, so she's not going to sit on any boards here in New Orleans. I mean, she sat on a number of boards as the representative of the New Orleans Saints in the business community. She's not going to be on those boards anymore either. It's just kind of understood. So
this remains in the courts. Okay, thanks a lot, Jeff. Tyler, over to you. Our governor has received a lot of national press this week.
He has.
He was doing a lot of interviews and appearances, but perhaps not all of the coverage was really what he intended it to be. And you wrote a really great piece for Politico magazine about the governor and the perception of him around the country. It was certainly among the media. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, I guess I kicked it off, and then Campbell Robertson with the New York Times did a similar piece about the governor's tax and spending policies, and then the Associated Press, Melinda Delatte, just did a piece. It's been a good week for the governor in terms of getting national attention, but as you say, it has not been a good week in terms of the kind of coverage, I guess, that he's been receiving.
So tell us about your piece. What did what did you tell us about the governor and his tenure as governor in Louisiana in your piece, and also what kind of feedback you're getting?
Right. My piece for Politico magazine is not really a surprise for people who keep up with Louisiana politics. It describes that while the governor is clearly running for president, traveling the country, talking about Hillary Clinton, talking about President Obama, there's something he's not been talking about, and that's his record budget, not only it's a record, but the budget that deficit that the state is facing, and how he has drawn down all of the different reserve accounts that a governor might draw upon. So the people I interviewed, and it includes many Republicans, say that the governor's out of tricks. The kinds of things that he has done in recent years to balance the budget, that money is not available anymore. And this is a message that the governor does not want to be told nationally clearly.
But the governor also is pointing to the fact that oil prices are down, and Louisiana is a state that really does depend on this oil money. No,
you're absolutely right. That has had an impact. I don't want to throw too many numbers out at people, but the budget deficit for the upcoming year is $1.6 billion. And of that, about $400 million is because of the drop in oil prices and the loss of revenue to the state. So the budget deficit was clearly in place beforehand, but if you talk to Governor Jindal, as I did for my story for Politico magazine, he put the blame on the oil price drop. But everybody independent of that I talked to really says, hey, this is because of the budget problems that Jindal himself has created.
Well, how does the governor characterize his term as governor, what he feels he has done for the state? How does he characterize it?
Yeah, he'll focus on other things. He will note that the state has had very strong private sector growth, not public sector, because that has been cut under his tenure. He'll point out that there have been bond rating increases during his tenure, a total of 8. He will point also that there's all sorts of investment going on in the state, particularly in the petrochemical corridor, although there are concerns now that that is going to begin, there'll begin to be cutbacks because of the oil price drop.
Tyler, the big story here is that you got to talk to the governor, which is something that few reporters have a chance to do.
I had never interviewed him in that way. You know, all the times I'd requested interviews with him, they never granted it until I was writing for a national publication.
And also he's, well, maybe campaigning for president, and he still hasn't formally announced, right?
No, but he's taking all the sorts of steps of someone who will be a Republican candidate for president. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Is he maybe sort of easing up on his opposition to modifying these tax incentives and tax breaks, which really are costing the state increasingly amount of money each year?
Yeah, Marcia, that's something that I wrote about in the piece, that he has taken the pledge. He took it when he ran for governor the first time in 2003. And you can define the pledge in different ways. He has a very, very strict rule that any sort of revenue increase qualifies as a tax increase. And as you mentioned, there's all sorts of tax exemptions that are on the books. The Advocate did a great series about them, showing what it's costing the state. It's gone up enormously in recent years. It costs the government just in the same way as when the government spends money. And others like Jay Darden, the lieutenant governor who is running for governor, they would say, hey, if you take away some of those tax exemptions, that doesn't count as a tax increase. Up till now, we have not seen governor show any wiggle room at all. Maybe he will, because the budget deficit that he and the state are facing is just so large.
Okay, Tyler, thanks a lot. Now over to Dawn and Gallier Hall. Now remember, not too terribly long ago, a chunk of Gallier Hall fell. Fortunately, nobody was standing underneath it when it fell.
Right. That chunk fell back in August, and it wasn't just the cornice that broke, it also cracked a granite step beneath it. After surveys were done, they realized it just wasn't going to be safe for people to be around there, especially for Mardi Gras. It is fenced off, it's closed off, and unlike every other year before when crew kings and captains would turn to the left and greet the mayor, this year they're turning to the right to greet the mayor, because the mayor's viewing stands are set up in Lafayette Square across from Gallier Hall. The building was dedicated back in 1853, and they say that the limestone and the granite it's built with really aren't conducive, go figure, to our humid climate. That they brought them in from New York, and the building hasn't had any major repairs since the 1980s, 1984 to be exact. And when they looked into the facade, the front facade to see what repairs would look like. That's a $1.1 million repair. They also discovered that the side facades also need some work, and the final estimate on all that is due in about 90 days. The city hopes to be in a design phase of fixing it in the springtime, and then maybe start fixing in the summer. But there's no money to do any of that in the city capital budget. And the city's going to look for the state to have some money in the state's capital budget.
And the state doesn't have
any
any money.
And the state doesn't have any money.
Deficit,
Plan C or D may be to look for FEMA reimbursement dollars. Although Gallier Hall was not damaged in a storm, there may be some project-based funds for another project that could be transferred over to Gallier Hall within the city, I'm told. Right now, the inside of the building is just fine. All this happened when a sprinkler upgrade was going on the inside of the building. It's the home for the city's film office. It's also a building that does generate a lot of its own income, not completely to cover the cost of the building, but there are private events there. The rooms are rented out. A lot of
so that's
film
still
industry.
happening?
That is still happening inside. There are actually still carnival organizations that are using celebration rooms inside. You just can't use the outside right now. It's the most, the city actually kind of tongue-in-cheek said everybody else in the city is used to construction now because we have more construction than anyone has seen in a generation in the city.
Including on the streets everywhere.
On the streets. Yeah. So everybody's just learning to adapt, including the mayor and the city council and the staff there who are thrown to the other side of the street this year.
It's very unusual for a city to have a fine-looking building like that. It's sort of like its protocol center.
Right.
It's very unusual.
The former city hall and now it's the toasting center. I said, is it worth it for the city to have this building that's going to cost so much to repair? And it does generate a lot of income.
It does generate income, and it's our building. Of course, we have to have that building, Dawn.
Well, I mean, for the city to own and operate it, would it be better served in private?
But you said the materials really aren't necessarily conducive to our humid atmosphere. It's still, that building's been there for a long time.
Since 1853, it's held up.
It's held up pretty well.
But the wear and tear and cracked pieces falling.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
And we saw a building on Royal Street, a similar date and time, fall to the ground in pieces at the same time.
Well, hopefully we'll find the money somewhere, because we certainly want to see Gallier Hall.
Well, we should know by the summer if anything is going to work to pay for it.
All right, Don, thanks a lot. Okay, Errol, it's your favorite time of year, carnival time, and each year you tell us about the satire in Carnival.
Well, this was going to be kind of a fun, upbeat segment, but first we need to acknowledge that last night, tragically, there was a shooting on St. Charles, Nerado. In the wake of it, 2 people got hit and both died. The police did what seems to be really great work. They were able to pinpoint the person who later confessed to it. They say they had 20 officers on the scene who actually chased him down. And it seems like the same old thing, a teenage black male gang out there. They get into an argument, get into a fight, and somebody has a gun. Now, if you got a gun, that's extra illegal because there's a law against having a gun on a parade route. And so this kid now has 2 murders that he's charged against, plus carrying a gun on the parade route. So 2 lives lost and 1 life ruined. That's just discouraging. And we've seen that kind of thing right almost at the same exact spot around St. Charles, Nerado. There's something poison about that area. I'm sure the police are aware of it. But other than that, I mean, it's been, and of course it becomes headlines around the country. Yeah. One person does. Other than that, so far it's been a good, and I'll say, safe Mardi Gras. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, and then so. But anyway, it's just a little disappointing.
And it's very tragic, very sad.
Talk a little bit about satire. There used to be a tradition in carnival parades to do a lot of satire, and then one of the crews did a satirical parade in 1877, which was during a time of Reconstruction, and it was a little bit too touchy for the federal officials there, and it caused some bad feelings and telegrams between Washington and New Orleans, and so they said no more satire, and there wasn't for a century, and then in 1977, the old Momus crew brought it back. And there are several crews that do satire, and I just want to show a few. One is Chaos, and the other is Le Coup d'Etat. Le Coup d'Etat is parading as we speak. This is Chaos from last night. And Chaos is the direct descendant from the Momus parade. They use the old Momus floats, and this is a drawing, but if you look at the wheels, they still got those old those wooden spoke wheels.
When did MoMA stop parading, Errol?
91, I believe. Okay.
And then when did Chaos start? It was
about 5 years later. I mean, and they just picked it up. And so, anyway, their title was Ways of Saying No, like in period, O period. And again, this is satire, so don't get offended out there, okay? All right. I mean, everybody gets offended in these parades across the spectrum.
Equal opportunity
satire. Everybody, all right? And so this is kind of a spoof on immigration and immigration laws. No way Jose, and I vote Democrat, and people say no. No Goodell, okay? This is the rough year that the NFL had this year with different scandals, and you see Darren Sharper's hand, driving something in. I personally think Goodell deserves more credit. I think he really stood by New Orleans after that Super Bowl incident, and he stood behind Tom Benson so far. But anyway, no Goodell. No Ebola Nola. And this is that we were able to survive that so far, but at the same time, we're having cutbacks in the medical system. And you see Ebola strands parading on the side right there. No Common Core, okay? And this is something that the Jindal was satirized on a couple of times. There's one of them, you see a Jindal up front, someone's saying, are you for it or against it? Who should I ask?
John White, thank you list.
Yeah.
I see Mickey Landry's name on there, a longtime educator in the city.
And then this is about the new Uber tax or Uber in New Orleans not being able to decide on the issue so far. And so they got no fare on that, all in United Taxi. And then what do we have next? Oh, this is the Bloody Mary. Okay, this is coup d'etat. Coup d'etat is parading right now as we speak. This is about the Mary Landrieu election. Her saying, if you don't like it, they can unelect me, which is in fact what they did. You see Cassidy is kind of a zombie-like figure on the right, and you see David Vitter down in the hole trying to bury Mary Landrieu. Again, everybody's offended in these things.
Fix my street.
Yeah, this is just about the street closing. That's a common theme too. Just with let me tell you this. Everything on there is right. That's what it's like driving uptown right now. The only difference is you can't see because the streets are dark. Zombies and vampires. This is just about the parking people and the different programs that are going on in the different streets and all that. It's kind of like the confusion in New Orleans. This is one of my favorites. This is Night of the Living Hipsters. And this is about the Marigny Bywater area, about kind of like the new crowd that's moving in. And, like a person wants a vegan po' boy and then the new pizza shops. But it's a good satirization of the Marigny
vegan po' boy?
Yeah.
Horrors.
Unlucky Horseshoe. Not quite sure. I think you just talk about life in general. Oh yeah, and then the problems that the fairgrounds had during the past year when they had the lack of support for Churchill Downs, and they hope that it comes back. And Nightmare in Potato Street. There's always a city council to spoof, and you see Stacey Head and Marlon Guzman and you see the various problems like with the fire department and the police department and the jail.
Yeah.
And this isn't satire, but this is a standard, the High Priest candy wagon that you see every year, and that, of course, is based on the old Roman candy wagon.
And they throw Roman candy from that one.
All right, so everybody have a good time tonight and keep your sense of humor handy, right?
Yeah, and look at these kind of parades. Look at what they're trying to say. Don't worry about the beads, all right? And always look at the back of the flow too, because sometimes the hardest hitting, which you don't see on these things, is on the back. I mean, the real message comes in right there. So have fun at Mardi Gras. That's the bottom line. Okay, Jeff, Pelicans. So we have just a few minutes left. So why don't you tell us how the Pelicans are looking? I understand we're mid-season, because I must confess I just really don't know that much about.
Well, I think they're in about as good a shape as Gallier Hall. They're crumbling right now. They lost 3 games in a row at home without their superstar Anthony Davis. They've had a lot of injuries again, and I think the fan base is becoming even more skeptical and more disillusioned. This is about the 3rd season in a row in the Monty Williams, Dell Demps tenure that they've had these injuries. And look, they're part of the game. We all know that, but at some point, I think one of these men, unfortunately, might be paying for it with their job, because if they don't make it back to the playoffs, and right now I'd say that's a long shot. They've got about 30 games left. They're in a battle to get the number 8 seed. Looks like the top 7 teams in the Western Conference are pretty much slotted. They will be one of 5 teams that is finished below 500. and failed to make the postseason, assuming they don't finish over 500. And I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, patience is going to run thin. I know Tom Benson is not happy with how things are going. And some,
are you sure that Tom Benson really is thinking
well,
that?
He actually told me when I did sit down with him a couple of weeks ago, that's one of the things he expressed to me pretty clearly, that he was not happy with how things are going out there. And it will be interesting to see who makes that call if they do have to, if it does come to that point. But I think there's a lot of tension, not only on the court, but off the court, because there's a huge financial investment Tom Benson's made in buying this team. And they're sort of in limbo right now with, I think people are 1 foot in, 1 foot out on the Pelicans, and they want to see some progress right now, at least the fans do.
What's attendance been like?
Attendance has actually been fairly good, but it's starting to wane. And with each home loss, they lost 3 games in a row, as I said, all at home. By the end of the game, boy, the seats were empty there, and that's what's going to get Tom Benson's attention more than the wins and losses.
With all the other deals built in between the having the rights to sell the Smoothie King name and the various sponsorships with the TV, I mean, don't they still make a lot of money off that team?
Oh, yeah, there's no question. They used to be completely in the red. Now they're in the black, in part also because of a very favorable deal with the state of Louisiana. Bobby Jindal cut them a deal that is as good as any in professional sports, and that has buoyed both franchises. And that's why, frankly, people talk, and I know there's a lot of fans that are concerned with this ownership struggle. No one, however this falls out, is going to move these teams. They're in such good financial condition, you'd be foolish, I think, to want to move anywhere else.
Well, that's certainly something that we want to hear, that they're going to stay here. Okay, folks, it's now time to look ahead. Errol?
Well, actually, not so much ahead, but just to be aware of. In what was a tough week for journalism, a guy named David Carr died last night, and he was a columnist for the New York Times. He's important locally in that because he covered the medium, and he was the one who first broke the story about the changes that were coming at the Times-Picayune. He was one of the few people to be able to get interviews with the owners, and has been following the story, and I was looking forward as the story unfolded to kind of see his take on things. But it's a big loss in media journalism.
And then, of course, Bob Simon, too, CBS correspondent, killed in a car crash. Jeff?
Yeah, so David Carr is a friend of mine, so it was devastating news last night, indeed. I would like to point further down the road to next weekend. We have another prep for the Louisiana Derby, and they're going to have a big day out at the fairgrounds. Rosie Napravnik, the very popular jockey who's retired to start a family right now, they're going to have Rosie Napravnik Day on Saturday the 21st. So it's a good day for fans to go out and not only see some horses that could run in the Kentucky Derby, but get to see a great jockey.
Thanks, Jeff. Don?
By this time next week, we'll be all recovering from Mardi Gras, and I'm going to make a prediction that it will go down, despite last night's bad news, as a good one for the city.
Wonderful. We're with that. Tyler?
Yeah, February 27th is the day that Governor Jindal has to present a budget. The key question is, will it be a real budget that will actually close the budget gap, big budget gap, or will it be just done with smoke and mirrors, as many people expect?
We will be waiting for that. Thanks a lot, Tyler. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and thank you guys for joining us. Of course, we want to see you next week for Informed Sources. Have a very happy and a very safe Mardi Gras. See you next week. Good evening.